lovely people, my name is Nicole and today I'm doing my December wrap up. This was originally going to be a great reading month because it was December and like I was going to be on break and I had so much reading to do to like fulfill my Goodreads reading challenge, and then it's just finals and the holidays and everything just got kind of crazy and it was a relatively small reading month. I say relative because like I still read multiple books, but like compared to other months it was not as big as I'd hoped it would be. So I ended up lowering my Goodreads reading challenge down to 135 just so that I could relax. Still a lot of books and I just didn't want to have to worry about it during the holidays, so I didn't want to have to be stressed about reading more and more and more. So I read, I think, a total of 138 books this year. For now, let's just get into the books I read this month. So the first thing I read is New Avengers Volume 2 Standoff, and this I enjoyed. It didn't have as much character development as I typically like in my comic books. I like a really good balance of action and character work, and this was mostly action. And don't get me wrong, it was cool action. Plot-wise, there were some really good developments, but it just didn't feel like we got a lot from the characters. There were a couple elements of the plot that just felt a little bit out of nowhere and over the top, but I did really enjoy the sort of constant presence of humor whenever a character is introduced or reintroduced. There's always a little like box that sort of tells you who they are, and those are always really funny. So I have mixed feelings about this. There are a lot of elements I really loved about it, and there are a lot of elements that just didn't work so well for me. Overall, I enjoyed it, it just didn't quite hit the spot, so I gave it 3 stars. Then I read Lumberjanes Volume 5 Out of Time, and I feel like I've talked about it a million times on this channel, but I love Lumberjanes. This one is no different. It was funny and clever, and so much plot happened in this. After the previous volume, which I felt like was a little bit of a filler, this one just knocked it out of the water. So good. I loved pretty much every moment of it, and I cannot wait to read the next one, which I do have, and I'll be reading that as soon as I get a chance. So I gave this one 5 stars. Then I read Understanding Comics: The Invisible Art by Scott McCloud, and this is a much older book than I thought it was. I knew it wasn't super new when I picked it up, but what I didn't realize is that this book is older than I am, which in the world of comic books seems pretty old. I mean, I feel like there have been a lot of new developments in comic books in the past 20 years, so I do think that this book could do with an update, but it did have a lot of really good information and a lot of sort of basic structural things that were really interesting. It was all presented in a humorous, fun, casual light. There were a couple times where it got a little bit boring, but overall, I do think that if you're a fan of comic books, this is well worth reading. It's a really good sort of basic overview of what comics are and what different elements go into making them up. Then I read this is kind of deceptive because I didn't actually reread Vampire Academy. I just read the short stories that are in the back of this 10th anniversary edition by Rochelle Mead. I love Vampire Academy. So when I was a preteen, I went through a huge vampire phase. Obviously it was sparked by Twilight, but I pretty much read everything I could get my hands on that had vampires in it. And I gotta say, out of all of those books I read, Vampire Academy is one of the only ones that still stays with me as just a phenomenal book series. And it was so much fun to read these short stories that give us a peek into Lys's head and Dimitri's head and just give us some behind the scenes stuff, some prequel information. They were all just so much fun and got to spend a little bit more time with some of my favorite characters like Christian, who is the love of my life. So yeah, I just really enjoy these, and if you're a fan of Vampire Academy, I highly recommend picking them up. Overall, I gave them 4 stars. Then I read Georgia Peaches and Other Forbidden Fruit by J. Robin Brown, and I really liked this book. I mean, obviously, gotta love anything that has good representation, and this definitely does. I also appreciated that for the most part it wasn't really a coming out book. The main character is already out to her friends and family, and while she does have to go back in the closet, the story isn't about her struggling with her sexuality. The characters in this all felt complex and interesting. A lot of them easily could have fit into, 50 different stereotypes, but they didn't. They managed to keep surprising me over and over and over again, and it just made them really compelling people to read about. I also was surprised by the fact that I didn't mind the religious aspect in this book. Normally, I do not like reading about religion. It's one of those things that, like, I don't have a problem with other people who like reading about religion or religious or whatever. It's just, it makes me uncomfortable to read about it. But I did not at all have a problem with it in this book. In fact, I actually really enjoyed a lot of the religious aspects. I think the way it was handled was just really well. My only main issue with this was that the main conflict had to do with communication errors, which is just sort of one of my pet peeves. But like I said, I did really like a lot about this book, so I gave it 4 stars. Then I read Heartless by Marissa Meyer, and oh boy, this book is so good. Marissa Meyer's writing I have always absolutely adored. She's so incredibly talented, and it was awesome to see something different from her, because while this is still a fairy tale retelling, kind of, it's more of a fairy tale origin story kind of thing. The Lunar Chronicles was very sci-fi, and this is so much more fantasy, which is really cool, sort of new thing from Marissa Meyer. The characters were all so interesting and incredibly complex people. It was really amazing how she managed to take this super just sweet, genuinely kind person in the beginning of the story and show her completely believable evolution into the cruel Queen of Hearts that we've seen in Alice in Wonderland. The main love interest was totally swoon-worthy from the very first scene we had with him. I was so in love with him. He's amazing and wonderful. And generally, I just love villain origin stories. I think they're really, really cool. And this one, like I've said so many times already, so good. Literal tears. I was crying at the end of this book. I say that a lot of books made me emotional, but not that many. I mean, like, still is a fair number, but not that many actually literally make me cry, and this one made me cry. So highly recommend. It's so good. I gave it 5 stars. And then the last book I read this month was I Wrote This For You, Please Find This by Ian S. Thomas, and I had to dog-ear my pages because I didn't have sticky tabs with me while I was reading this. Tear. It's fine, I'll live, hopefully. But I really enjoyed this. I liked the sort of sequel kind of to this, which is I Wrote This For You and Only You. And so I was fairly certain I would like this one. There were a number of times where the poems felt maybe a little bit preachy, but overall, I really like Ian S. Thomas's writing. I like the pairing of photography and words that he has, and most of the poems in here are just really heartfelt and beautiful. Alright, so those are all the books I read this month. Let me know what you guys thought of any of them in the comments. I love you, and I'll see you later.